Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. On this episode, we are going to be making butter baked turkey with pecan cranberry relish and warm sorghum vinaigrette. It's a long name. It's 3 components, and actually this is one of the less complicated turkey recipes that requires a lot less forethought, pre-planning. All you need to do before this is to have your turkey defrosted. So no frozen turkey, but as long as it's defrosted, you can do all of this on Thanksgiving and be ready to go. So I've got my turkey defrosted. This is about 12 pounds. The recipe calls for 8 to 10 pounds. And she says for 8 to 10 pounds, it'll be done between 2.5 and 3 hours. So I'm thinking mine will be about 3.5 probably. I think general wisdom is about 15 minutes per pound. So another 2 pounds, another 30 minutes. We'll see. My oven is on 325 degrees. And I've got all the things I need for the turkey itself here, except for one thing, and I'm gonna do what we need to do with that right now, and I'll show you. This is a lot of butter. This is butter measured in pounds, not even cups or not tablespoons, not even cups, pounds. So I've got this butter. I'm using unsalted. She doesn't specify, so I chose unsalted. We're putting a lot of salt on this anyway. Hopefully it will be salty enough. And we've got a lemon halved that we're gonna put in this butter, and we're not gonna need this for about half an hour after it goes in the oven. So I'm gonna put this back on the stove and get it all melted, get the lemon infused into the butter. I just started it melting so that it wasn't super full before I put the lemon in there. So you want that melted, but it doesn't need to be really hot. You just want to keep it warm while your turkey is baking. So now we have our turkey. She says just a fresh turkey. This is from a local farm. So doesn't have any extra brining or salt or whatever added to it. So it's just turkey. But whatever you have is fine. I'm absolutely sure. However, it's really hard to find an 8 to 10 pound turkey that's not just a turkey breast, because turkeys are huge these days. So the first thing we're gonna do with this, I'm not gonna bake it in this, but I needed a little extra room to turn it around and put all the salt where it needs to go. So that's what I'm doing now. I have the salt measured out for this recipe and the pepper measured out for this recipe, and I mix them together so that I can sort of evenly distribute them all over the turkey, both inside and out. So that's what I'm gonna be doing now. And I won't contaminate my other salt cellar with turkey hands. Washed my hands a million times already today. Oh, because we rinsed this inside and out and then patted it dry with paper towels. So there's probably a little bit of water here, but I got as much of the liquid off of it as I could. And now we're gonna put on salt and pepper. Lift up all the bits, trying to get all of the skin seasoned here. And I'm gonna turn it over, get all of it. That means I can use both hands and not worry about it, because all of this is going on or in my turkey. So there's this little cavity here. Mine had an extra super long bit of skin here that I trimmed off, and I'm gonna my skin seems to be sort of bunched up on one side, and there's a little cut off extra here, but that'll be okay, because we're gonna take care of that. We're gonna be covering that later. So now's the harder part. I'm gonna try to get as much into this cavity as I can, because this is not brined. So we need salt everywhere. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm not gonna wash my hands as much as I really want to because I still have to work with this turkey. So I have some fresh thyme and fresh rosemary, and I have this orange that has been halved. And all of this needs to go into the cavity. So I'm gonna start with some of the herbs. And then I'm gonna put in half of the orange. And then I'm gonna put in some more herbs. Another one on that side, sure. And then the rest of the orange and the rest of the herbs. So there we go. It's probably more thyme than it calls for, but thyme is relatively mild, so I'm not worried about that. And now I need to transfer it to my actual dish. So I'm gonna clean up a little bit and bring my other dish over here. So I think this is technically, they called it a lasagna pan. I think I got it for free when I got my set of All Clad when we got an induction stove. But it's the smallest one I have. I have a really huge roasting pan, which is great when you're cooking a 20-pound turkey and you're feeding a bunch of people. We are not feeding a bunch of people today. This is just for the family, and we're just testing out the recipe. It's not Thanksgiving yet, but Thanksgiving is coming up, so I thought I'd go ahead and test it out. We always love a Thanksgiving dinner, so we're trying some new stuff, and we thought we'd show it to you before Thanksgiving. So I'm gonna take this, and I think it will just fit. There we go. I think that's a perfect fit. Put this over here, and now I can wash my hands because I was careful not to touch these handles with anything that had been contaminated. And this is now gonna go into the oven at 325 degrees for 30 minutes. And we'll be back when that time is up to show you what we do at that point. And while we're waiting, I'm just going to be prepping everything that I need for the other two components of this recipe. My turkey's been in the oven for only about half an hour, nowhere near done, but now we're gonna get to the butter baked part. So I have some cheesecloth here. I've cut it approximately 2 feet by 2 feet. Doesn't really matter, but we just need to fold it to a size that will cover only the breast. So that is my goal here. I'm gonna do that first because I don't want to do that when there is a lot of drippy butter on it. And I think that will be fine. Butter is warm because it's all melted. So I'm going to dip this in here using some tongs and get it saturated. That is super. Now it's going to be really hard to get it unfolded. This is an interesting method. All right, so drippy, 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 drippy. All right. There we go, and now I need to try, there, that's not gonna be too hard. So I'm just gonna try to cover the breast with this. So this is going to protect the breast from getting too brown and hopefully too done before everything else is done. And I'm gonna do this every 30 minutes until I think we've got about 30 minutes left. So I think mine is gonna take, did I say 3.5 hours? So in 3 hours, which will be about 4 o'clock, this is for me, not for you, but in about 3 hours, so probably at 2.5 hours, I will check the temperature just to see where we are. In the end, you really want the thigh to be in the 180s, like mid 180s when you're done, and the breast to be in the mid 160s. So that's what we're gonna be looking for. So I'll be sort of testing it before that just to see if I think we're at the 30 minutes before it's done time. That will be entirely a judgment call, but I'm gonna use the temperature and kind of the looks of it, the brownness of it to decide this. But so I'm gonna do this every 30 minutes. And I won't show you this every time, but I'll show you what it looks like when I decide it's time to take this off and roast it for the last 30 minutes. So this is gonna go back on the stove and keep just on low to keep it warm, keep it melted. And this is gonna go back in the oven, and I'll set a timer for another 30 minutes and keep doing this over and over. All right. But while I'm running the camera, and I was just in the middle of measuring this stuff when my timer went off, so I thought I'd show you. Here we go. One of the things I really love in my kitchen are these sort of plunger measuring cups. So there we go. So the part of this recipe calls for sorghum, which I already had because we used it for a Pool's Diner recipe. I think it was pork ribs. I'll link that above. And so I've measured that already. But the good thing is I don't have, well, I have another one of these, but it's a lot bigger and I don't really need that much. But I also need honey. And these are two of the things that I normally would use this for. But you can measure both of them. If they're going into the recipe at the same time, there's no reason to do these separately. What you do is you measure this, and then you measure one thing and then pull it down to where the measurement is for the other thing you need to measure. And yeah, and then just making sure they both go at the same time. And then you can just fill it up as if it was the only thing you were measuring, because you'll get the right amount. And what you do is just sort of measure it up to the top. You don't want it overflowing, but you want it full. And there we go. So now I have both of these measured in this one container. Can hardly tell, but it's 2 ingredients, both measured, and it'll be really easy to get them all out of this container, which is why I really like this measuring cup for thick, sticky things, or things like mayo or lard, peanut butter, things like that, because it's really easy to get them out. And of course I'm holding it up and spilling some out, but that's okay. All right, we'll see you back in probably about 2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours. Okay, I think we are at about the 2.5 hour mark. So I decided I was going to check this. And here we go. I put this all the way in. This is my thermo pen. It's great. I love it. And we are almost there. We're at like 150, mid 150s, depending on how far in I go. So not quite there, but almost. And our thigh is in the mid 160s, approximately 160. So I would like the thigh to be a bit more done, I think, before I take this off. So I'm gonna go maybe 15 more minutes with the butter on it. So I'm gonna do that one more time, and then we'll take it off. Our breast might be overdone at that point, but I really don't want the thighs to be underdone. So that is what we're doing. Taking our butter baked turkey, and that's already out of the oven. I think I overcooked it because the timing, it was done before I expected it to be done. Let's just say that. So I meant to be cooking this about half an hour ago, but oh well, things happen. We are now going to be making the Pecan Cranberry Relish to serve with our turkey. And I've got all of my ingredients here. So let's see. So I've got a 10-inch-ish skillet that we are melting the butter. She doesn't say how high of a heat. I've got it on medium. Should be fine. We're gonna melt this butter, and then we are just going to toast some pecans. These should be just roughly chopped with a knife, so I didn't use my chopper like I like to use for pecan pies, where I want a really small chop. So our butter's just about melted. I'm gonna go ahead and put the pecans in. I did measure these before I chopped them. The way she says it is the measurement of pecans roughly chopped rather than the measurement of pecans of roughly chopped pecans, so that I usually measure it before I chop it when that is how it is worded, but I don't know. Probably very little difference, but definitely some. So now these we are just toasting in the butter for like 4 minutes. She says to be very careful not to burn these because nuts do burn pretty quickly, but we've got it on medium heat, so it shouldn't be too bad. And oddly enough, this recipe is in the pecan section of deep brine roux. So, well, actually I think that's about the only ingredient in this dish that that this recipe has that's in the book. Because the book is divided by ingredients, and pecans are one of those, but I don't think there's turkey or leeks or anything else, but that is in this. We are having some other recipes from the book, so when you see the pictures, you'll see some of the other recipes. When you see the pictures of our plates, we're making it a little mini Thanksgiving dinner. These are smelling really toasty, so I'm gonna go ahead and add the other ingredients. I just don't want them to burn. So we have some dried cranberries that I've already measured out. And we have some thinly sliced leeks, just the white parts. I have maybe some yellowy bits. I have shown you guys how I usually cut up leeks. I think that's in my kakaliki recipe. I'll link that up in the top. And now the only thing we have to do is add some salt and pepper. So we're going to just stir this up for about 2 minutes. Cook it all together. Trying to break up those cranberries that like to stick together. All right, that is pretty much it for our pecan cranberry relish. So I'm gonna swap this over here and turn this burner on low just to keep it warm. And we're gonna make the sorghum vinaigrette. So let me go get all of those ingredients. Once again, we are starting with melting some butter. There's a lot of butter in this recipe. There we go, melting our butter. And we're adding some red onion. So this is pretty finely minced red onion. I'm adding to our melting butter. And we'd add salt. So we're just going to cook this until it is soft and translucent. No timing on this, just and also no heat recommendation. So I'm just going to go with medium. Worked okay for the Pecan Cranberry Relish. These are starting to get a little brown, and I don't think we really want that, so I'm gonna call this done for now. And we're gonna add, I've already pre-measured the fresh pepper, black pepper, and some nutmeg, which I'm gonna throw in. Didn't exactly measure it. I estimated. So I've got that, and now we're going to add some apple cider vinegar, because this is a vinaigrette. And we're gonna bring this up to a boil. This is starting to boil, and I can really smell the vinegar. So I'm gonna add, I showed you how I measured in here these two ingredients. It's the sorghum and honey. So it's gonna be a sweet vinaigrette. And you see how easy it is to get all of that into my pan instead of trying to scoop it out of the other kind of measuring cup. All right. So now this is just about done, but we want to reduce it by half. So we're just gonna let it boil, and then we'll be ready to serve. Our turkey came out of the oven about 30 minutes ago. She says to rest it for 20, so we're plenty good on that. And everything is just about ready. So we're gonna see how long it takes us to reduce this by half. It's kind of hard to tell when we're reduced by half, but we'll see. I'm gonna let this boil and try not to stir it too much while it reduces, because that will make it take longer. I think it's been boiling for about 5 minutes, so it took a little while to come up to a good boil, and now it's been boiling for about 5 minutes, and I think I'm gonna call this about reduced by half. I can see the bottom of the pan for a second when I scrape it across, so I think that's probably reduced enough, and that's it. Oh, excuse me, vinegar. I'm gonna call that good. I'm gonna turn this on low. We've got our Pecan Cranberry Relish also on low, because these should be served warm, and both will keep in the refrigerator in a sealed container for up to a week. But you do want to serve them warm with your warm turkey. So now I'm gonna go carve a turkey and make some plates, and we'll show you what it looks like and let you know what we think in just a minute. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make butter baked turkey with pecan cranberry relish and warm sorghum vinaigrette out of Deep Run Roots, Vivian Howard's first cookbook. She has another one now. And so we had this last weekend. We made it before Thanksgiving so we could show you what it's like for Thanksgiving. And I have to say, it's a pretty easy recipe for turkey. You don't have to pre-brine it. You don't have to find a way to keep it in your refrigerator all butterflied like a spatchcock turkey, which is an awesome way to cook it, but it's really difficult because it's hard to cut through those turkey bones like the chicken bones. It's really easy to spatchcock a chicken. It's a little bit more difficult to spatchcock a turkey. I do like it, but it's harder. So you don't have to do any of that for this recipe. All you have to do is have a lot of butter and some cheesecloth. So you season it, put it in the oven, and just cook it. So that's pretty easy. I feel like I overcooked it, sort of the timing was a little bit off for my turkey. It wasn't super dry, it wasn't bad, but I do feel like I probably overcooked it. I usually use a probe thermometer and just take it out when it's done with the butter basting and the butter on the cheesecloth and trying to do that every 30 minutes and trying to leave that off at the end. I ended up having to cook it a little bit longer just to get the skin a little bit crispy on the breast, longer than I should have. Anyway, that was on me, but that makes it a little bit more difficult to judge if you've never made a whole turkey before, if you don't know how those temperatures go. Like, sometimes it can take, 5 minutes to go up 10 degrees, depending. Sometimes it takes an hour. It's a thing you have to have done before and kind of understand. And because I use a probe thermometer, I rarely pay attention to that all that much. I'm just like, okay, it's done, you take it out. Anyway, even though I felt like it was overcooked, it was fine. It was not dry, so that's good. The vinaigrette was delicious. The Pecan Cranberry Relish was delicious. And we had some left over and we were using the turkey for other things. I ended up making some gravy and reheating some of that, and it was really good. We did miss the gravy. Just doesn't feel like Thanksgiving to us without the gravy, but the relish is good. The vinaigrette is good. If you're looking for something different to do for Thanksgiving, that's a great option. So we had some left over and we ended up having it on some pan-seared pork chops, and it was great. Went really well with that. I think you could use those components on other things, however you want to. We did serve it with some collards and like we've made previously, and I'll link that. And the citrus sweet potato butter, which was also delicious and also from this book, and we've made that before, and I'll link that for you. And I would highly recommend that. She also recommends roasted Brussels sprouts or stewed rutabagas or turnip roots and greens. I think with this, if you were looking for a stuffing-like thing, I would go with the turnip roots and greens gratin, because that's sort of a bread pudding with the turnips in it, and that would be good. I think that would go well and provide you a different sort of stuffing. So if you're looking for a very fancy Thanksgiving, you could do that. Yeah, I think it's a great recipe for the turkey. I think the sides, if you're doing it on Thanksgiving, you will want to make them beforehand and reheat them on the day, because it took up basically my whole cooktop with the butter and making the vinaigrette in a pan and making the relish in a pan, and you're supposed to serve all of that warm. So she tells you how to deal with that if you want to make them ahead and reheat it, and how long they'll last. And so, but I would highly recommend you do that if you're going to do this for Thanksgiving. But anyway, we really enjoyed the recipe, and if you decide to make it, please let me know in the comments down below, and hit the subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up. Come back. Watch me make something else next week.